is really great. I've been on some where one that's because I don't know either the background of the people or their experience, and most people out there, trust me, are not like you. They're just not. And one podcast I was on, it was a lady running it, and she, right before the show started, was screaming, I think, at her husband, and then ordering the dog out of the room and carrying on, and it was just, I thought, well, it's going to be another book right in and of itself.
Well, one thing a lot of people don't realize, I do a live broadcast, okay? And then, it's after I'm done, you can go onto my website or all the major apps, and you can listen to it as a replay. A lot of people keep saying, well, it's a podcast. I said, no. Here's what you do in a podcast. You record the thing. If you make a mistake, you can stop, okay?
Yep.
And redo it. And then before you even put it up on the internet, right, on the media, you can go through and edit things out that you screwed up on. So if I say the wrong word or I say the wrong thing, hey, I can't do anything to change it. Whatever I say or you say, it's over the air.
Yeah. Yep, and that's getting rare, more and more rare. And the people who can do it aren't that many either. It's sort of like the talking heads in the news business. It's the difference between being able to be a world-class reporter and report it live on the air and just reading from the cue cards. Big difference.
Oh, yeah. But, doing a show like I normally do, because it's paranormal, I got to keep up on everything from UFOs, abductions, Bigfoot, cryptics, all this stuff. I have to constantly read on it because, I have to be able to carry on a conversation. And sometimes it's bad because I'll get a guest on and then, I realize the guest doesn't know as much as I do, so I have to back down,
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting field, I have to say, partially because a lot of really people, like you say, they're so reluctant to talk about it. There's a lot of people willing to talk about it who are a little off center, but I think of my cousin too. Speaking of, the Midwest is an interesting place. My cousin was on a farm that was originally developed by my great grandfather, and one time, I don't remember how we got on it, running back behind their house is what they called the creek. It's like a little river.
Uh-huh.
And it has very deep banks. We used to fish down there when I was young. And I could tell he was really bothered. I was visiting him one time. And we grew up together, so we were pretty close, like brothers, really. And I pried on him until he told me that a week before, he had woken up in the middle of the night and there were lights down at the creek, and believe me, it's just like a big ditch in the ground. At the top of the ditch down the creek was probably 70 feet maybe, so there was room enough for something down there. And he said he walked out of the house and down there, and there was something down there, he said. Now this is in South Dakota, and this is out in the middle of nowhere. And Vic's gone now, but I grew up with a guy, knew him for his whole life, knew me from and he didn't make the stuff up, and he would never talk about it to anybody else. And he said it went under the bridge and just took off, and he never, and I never brought it up when other people were around because I figured it was his business, but he was really shook up by it, I'll tell you.
Well,
and between that and the guy with the water, made a believer out of me.
Well, like I said, there is things out there that we just don't know what it is. And, as far as I'm concerned, back when I took a time break out of broadcasting, when I was managing these photo stores, we were importing these infrared binoculars from the Czechoslovakia and Russia, military surplus. And back then, they were like $3,000. Very, very expensive. And anyway, I took a pair home over the weekend, and I'm looking around, so the eyes glow up, and I can see a dog, plain as could be at night, But then I was bored, and all of a sudden I looked up in the sky, And that's what really amazed me and really got me believing there's a lot of strange things going on. Like I would see an object flashing up in the sky, come almost to a stop and make a complete turn and go an opposite direction. Now, I don't know any satellite that can do it, a comet, or an asteroid that can do that. And I saw a lot of it over the weekend at night looking at this. So I happen to know the director of the local observatory up in Puyallup, Washington, and I called him up and I said, hey, this is what I seen. Now, they were used to looking in the big telescopes, and the guy goes, no, I don't believe it. I said, okay, take a pair home for the weekend. He took a pair home. Monday or Tuesday, he came back, and he goes, oh, my God, I want a pair. And I said, what did you see? And he goes, I saw objects, like look like they were fighting up in the sky and all this weird stuff and turning and going different directions and zigzagging and all this stuff. And next thing I know, every person in the member of that group bought a pair. And I mean, for a while, we couldn't even keep them in. And that kind of opened my eyes up. There was things out here that, whatever it is, we don't know.
Yeah. Yep. No, I really, I've seen enough stuff like that in my life too. I think you live long enough and you're out and about, and you just run across stuff that there's no logical, as we define logic, explanation for it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just weird things. And that's what I find interesting doing the show, because, I mean, I hear all these weird stories, and some of them I honestly, like Art used to tell me, take it as entertainment. And I do. Yeah. And, and then some of the stuff I really, kind of, my hair stands up when I get a guess in and they're telling me what they saw or what happened, because I really believe that they believe what they saw.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. And so much of it has such a continuity, a thread of continuity through it, that if everybody's making it up, they must be talking to each other all over the world, because a lot of the things that are described by completely disparate people have a similar thread to them. So, who knows?
Now, did you ever listen to Art Bell?
I have a couple times, yes.
He was
in a long time. I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Yeah, he did a show, 2 of them actually, or maybe 3. And the guest was Mel Waters, and it was about a hole up in Ellensburg on property owned that had no bottom to it. And he had the show on, and this guy, it was really outrageous. And I'm going to tell you right up front, it was a put on. Art, ever so often, just for fun, would see what he could get away with on his show. So he had one of his ham buddies, call in. They came up with this good story about Mel's hole. And people all over the world believed this hole. You could throw stuff in it, and things would come back alive out of it and all this stuff. And it got to a point where there was a cult following with it. Even the local radio stations were trying to find the place. And it was a big, crazy thing. So then they came up with another one that in Nevada, that was some Indian tribe that Mel supposedly got to know, went there, and there was another hole. It had no bottom in it. And they decided they were going to take a sheep, right, and put it in a box and lower it in this hole. So they start lowering this sheep into this deep hole, right? And all of a sudden, the sheep quits making noise, so they bring it up. And now the sheep is like hard as a rock almost. So then, all of a sudden, as the sheep is laying on its side, it bursts open, and like a penguin came out.
Oh, this is great. Yeah.
And the thing is, the people bought it and really got into it, believing this whole story. And I, when when Art told me, it was all made up, I could tell it was. I mean, come on, a penguin coming out of a sheep. But,
you skeptic.
Oh, and ice came out of the ground that you could set it on fire and it would burn. Weird, all that story. But that tells you how naive a lot of people are.
Yeah, it's tough. And you watch some of the things going on, some of the shows, some of the channels, cable and other on TV anymore. Some of them, particularly the supposed news programs, I feel like they're, disreputable TV preachers who just prey on people who don't have the educational tools to deal with it, and they believe it. I think it's part of the age that we live in now. But you're right. I mean, there's a lot of that going on, stuff, and it's not funny. I mean, the thing you're talking about is really makes me laugh, and you're right. I mean, it's amazing that people would believe it. So when people do stuff like that, only it's serious stuff. It can affect people's lives or the country or whatever, and it's just simply untrue. That's another part of the age we live in now. I think it's hideously dangerous, but there's more and more of it going on all the time.
You're talking about disinformation coming out on the news.
Yep.
Yeah, but as our president says, all the news is fake. But then you know what? Then you go. I'm not going to get political, but then if you listen to what comes out of Washington D.C., who do you believe?
Yes, yeah. We're back to a time. It's not the first time this happened. When you look back at the founding of the country, there were pamphlets and stuff. Same thing during the Civil War, and you read them now, and scurrilous doesn't even begin to describe them. It was just unbelievable stuff. So we've been through things like that before, but they caused a lot of bloodshed, a lot of trouble.
I'm going to blame a lot of that on the internet. Seriously, I mean, the internet is so much full of disinformation that it's scary. I had a friend back maybe 4 years ago, 3 years ago, as a joke, put a thing up, rest in peace, Johnny Mathis. Okay? And, it didn't take very long before all of a sudden there was a thing up, hitting the news, that Johnny Mathis died. And all of a sudden, Johnny Mathis says, I'm not dead.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, I had never gotten involved with Facebook, but I had a couple of old friends back in the Midwest say, look, we can talk on Facebook. So I signed up for it, and I saw all this stuff being posted, really disruptive stuff that you just read it and you knew the content being reposted. Whoever originated the content was not our friend. Or, they had their own agenda for the content they posted. And after posting a couple screeds about how this wasn't true, I thought, no, you're playing the game. So all I do now when I see one of these posts that are incendiary, reposted by somebody, I just research now they have to post where it came from. So I just researched the company and then put up the background of the company. And boy, people got upset. I mean, I had one person who I'd known for years. He was reposting this really extraordinarily, happened to be right-wing stuff, reposting it, memes about this and that, and they were just breathtakingly untrue. And so I just started posting, who the originators of the original meme were, which you can track down pretty easy. Oh, he got so upset. Unfriended me after sending me this big screed about how I was trying to humiliate him and all this stuff. And now a number of people on Facebook are doing the same thing. And I think that's the only solution for it, is for people to be understanding that when there's a lot of stuff out there that's designed just to ring the chimes of our own personal prejudices or beliefs. But I think it's really an incredibly important thing for all of us to put a stop to it by just making sure that we know where that's coming from. Because a lot of it's coming from places and people who are very definitely not our friends.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think a lot of it came out of this country from the election period.
Yep. And they've proven that to be the case.
Oh, yeah.
So at least people are aware of it now. So and a lot of the major companies are trying to put a stop to it, but it's so huge.